What's up guys, and welcome back to the Rails of Mass. Today's adventure is going to begin right where the previous one left off, as we continue our exploration in the former Bay Colony Railroad Newton branch. Now crossing over the bridge from the Newton side, we find ourselves arriving in Needham one final time. Although the rail here has been removed, it is still quite obvious where it once was. There are still many ties in place here. We now find ourselves quickly approaching the first crossing, the Blue Heron Trail. Even though the rail is gone, the crossbuck remains here. You can tell it's definitely been here a long time, and if you look very closely you can still make out where some of the letters once were. About 50 feet away from the crossing, the right-of-way becomes unrecognizable. So from here, let's take a look at the map. The first section we'll be following will be leading us right towards 2nd Ave. Now coming up to the air, we're going to start following that same path. From here, the railroad would have cut across this parking lot, and through the wooded area in the center would have continued towards 2nd Ave. Now one thing we need to focus on here in the center of the screen is that line of vans. Beginning just after the street, right next to the vans on the right hand side, we do have rail again. This is probably one of the most intact sections of the railroad remaining here. Now let's come back down to ground level and take a better look at what remains here. At one time there was a switch here, and about 3 tracks crossing the road. The industrial park here was described as a spaghetti bowl of sidings, but unfortunately the locations of many of those sidings was not very well documented. From here the rail line continued in a straight line behind the neighboring buildings. Many of these buildings were rail served back in the day. We now find ourselves on the other side of that line of vans, looking back towards 2nd Ave and the Charles River. The switch points are also visible in the distance. Beyond this point, the rails are buried through the next parking lot, but they are still in place underneath the asphalt. Now from the other side of that parking lot, You can see a small section of rail remains intact between this parking lot and the neighboring one. From here, things are once again buried under the asphalt. Now back at ground level and on the other side of that parking lot, we can once again see traces of where the rail line once was. It's around this area the tracks would have split in different directions. The building in the upper left corner is a hotel. I was involved in its construction several years ago, and I do remember traces of rail in the parking lot during construction, but all traces of that are now long gone. Now as we pan to the left, we can notice the large concrete parking structure here. We're now looking at 37 A Street. Although you wouldn't know it today, this was once Kraft Foods, and it was a rail-served customer here in the industrial park. Behind this building, we also get a look at the Coca-Cola bottling plant. Coca-Cola was a rail-served customer here and through the Conrail days. But unfortunately, when Bay Colony took over the lines from Conrail, they kept the Coke business for themselves, choosing to unload the cars at Beacon Park Yard. I find it interesting to think about how things could be different if Bay Colony did get the Coca-Cola business. Could this park still be rail served today? Would we have Mass Coastal in Needham? You never know. I suppose it's also possible with a customer like Coca-Cola, Bay Colony still could be in business today. But you never know. I like to look at the industrial park kind of like a mall concept. You have an anchor customer like Coca-Cola, which is like a Target. If you have a big customer like that leave, it's really hard to keep the other doors open. We're now looking back across A Street, and the former rail line would be right behind the buildings in the distance. Now from here we're going to go back over to the bridge area and start exploring in another direction. Now from here we're going to follow the same general direction as before, but we're going to be taking a left, in between the parking lot and the driveway to this building on our left. Another point of interest here is going to be that older building in dead center right now. This is 254 2nd Ave in Needham. It too was once a rail-served customer, listed as Decatur Hopkins. I'm not sure what kind of business they were into or what kind of products they received or sent out here, but if you know, be sure to let me know in the comments. The tree line here marks just about where the rail line would have been, and we find ourselves crossing 2nd Ave one more time. The building on the left is 15 4th Ave. At one time, the building on the left was American Door, another rail-served customer here in the park. Looking into the trees and brush, we can tell we're on the right path as we find the rail sticking out here. The long garage door on the side of the building is definitely a sign that we once had boxcars loaded or unloaded here. Based on the thickness of that tree by the rail, you can tell it's been quite some time since the trains passed through here. From here, the rail line continued along this fence line. That straight line bump in the asphalt is a telltale sign, but there's most likely rail buried under here as well. And we have a random piece of rail just buried in the ground here. Continuing along the fence line, the track would have been under that long line of vans and trucks back there. Here I also found the remains of another switch. Now continuing, we once again reach another split. To the left would have went towards Kendrick Street, and to the right here goes towards Coca-Cola. The name of the park, the New England Business Center, didn't come around until the late 80s and early 90s. Before that, this was the New England Industrial Center. Over the years, much of the industrial operations have moved out of here, and now it's more business offices and tech firms. Even the Coca-Cola bottling plant looks different than it did back in the Bay Colony days. It got a facelift over the recent years, and I was actually involved in that project as well. We're now turned around 180 degrees, and looking back towards that last split in the track. From here we're going to follow the line towards Kendrick Street. The tree line is the general area of where the rail line once was. Although I did check the area around the utility poles, there were no signs of visible trackage left here on this side of Kendrick Street. The Kendrick Street crossing was torn up in the early 2000s, but it does still have rail on the other side. If you look closely on the center of the screen, you can see what remains of the rail line in the parking lot. This track has definitely seen better days, but it's nice to see it's still in place here. From here, the track continued at that same angle, and ended up going to a switch which was right by the walking path. I have a strong feeling if you were to dig in the woods in this section, you'd be able to find more track. Now back on that walking path, we can see more evidence of rail here. The building in the background was actually rail served at one time. We're now at the International Car Parts Warehouse. Although ICP never did receive rail service, another customer in the building's former life did, and we can see evidence of that here at the loading dock. This is yet another building I've worked in the area. From here, the track would have ended just after the building itself. We're now looking in the direction of the last switch. And further down would have been the final customer in the park, Polaroid. The neighboring building, 140 Kendrick Street, was rail served. Although unrecognizable today, this was once Polaroid. I believe in the later years it was also Georgia Pacific at one time, but I could be wrong on that. The rail line would have followed around the same area of that walking path, and ended just behind the building on the left. Although definitely unrecognizable today, this would have been the furthest extent the rail line reached into the industrial park. Although I do remember being able to find small remnants of the railroad behind this building in previous trips, I was unable to find any signs of it during my latest visit. Well guys, it looks like we finally reached the end of the line here in Needham, but there's still much more to see down the road. Be sure to join us back here in the future as we explore the Millis Industrial Branch. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.